8. The Solar Temple. The Order of the Solar Temple was founded in Geneva, Switzerland in 1984 and went on to establish a presence in several other countries. It claimed to base its practices on the ideals of the Knights Templar, but in reality, the organization's beliefs consisted of a bizarre mix of elements borrowed from Christian, UFO religion, Rosicrucianism, and New Age philosophies. Its leaders preached about fighting oppression and persuaded followers to fork over millions of dollars in donations for the cause. From the outside looking in, the mysterious organization seemed like a doomsday cult with extremist beliefs. These suspicions were confirmed in 1994 and 1995, when dozens of worshippers took their own lives in France, Switzerland, and Canada, for reasons that remain unclear to this day. In Quebec, one group sacrificed a human they believed was possessed by the devil, then took part in a Last Supper ritual. Not long after that, 15 high-ranking members of the church took their own lives, and 38 were killed in Switzerland. The deceased wore ceremonial robes, and some victims were found arranged in a circle inside an underground temple. At least 3 more of these ritualistic mass deaths took place over the following months. While it's unclear exactly why the group members chose to carry out these disturbing tragedies, they were clearly conditioned to believe that there was a good reason for doing so. It's unclear whether the secretive group still exists today or how big it is, but thankfully, the bizarre massacres are no longer happening. 7. Larry Ray. After being released from prison in 2010, Larry Ray moved into his daughter's campus apartment at Sarah Lawrence University in New York. He became a mentor to her housemates, who came to regard Larry as an extremely intelligent and wise individual, almost to the point of being all-knowing or godlike. Larry also convinced the impressionable young students that he had ties to the CIA, NATO, former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, and other powerful people and organizations, despite being a broke ex-con who was couch surfing in his daughter's living room. After earning the roommates' trust, he got them to divulge their secrets, insecurities, vulnerabilities, and trauma. He said that he could fix what was wrong with their minds and help them get their lives back on track. But he was actually gathering dirt to control, intimidate, and blackmail his victims with. In the meantime, Larry slowly alienated the students from their families and friends outside the group they'd formed, with him at the center. What started as a manipulation eventually turned into outright abuse. Larry convinced his victims to give false confessions to things they never did, and made them believe that they'd gotten him sick or broke something of his, and owed him money for it. He then made them call up the relatives he'd ordered them to stop talking to and ask for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. This money went straight to Larry, who also collected every penny earned by a woman he was pimping out as a high-end escort. He controlled every aspect of his victims' lives, right down to their sleep schedules, exercise routines, and diets. They were forced to do back-breaking work and were humiliated in front of each other as part of Larry's convoluted character-building and growth exercises. He also berated his victims endlessly, to the point of psychological torture. Anytime someone denied Larry's false allegations, he subjected them to brutal hours-long interrogations. And if they continued to challenge him after that, or God forbid, leave, they risked having all the dirt Larry had collected over the years being posted online, emailed to their college, or sent to their workplace. When authorities finally caught up with Larry, they accused him of victimizing at least 7 people over a 10-year period. He was convicted of trafficking, extortion, conspiracy, money laundering, and other crimes, and was sentenced to 60 years in prison. And while most of his victims have disentangled from the things Larry made them believe, the emotional and psychological damage is lasting. Unfortunately, those he brainwashed may very well spend the rest of their lives coping with the severe trauma he caused. 6. Bianca Edmonds. When Australian native 35-year-old Bianca Edmonds decided she wanted her ex permanently out of the picture, she began working her charm on her new husband, 51-year-old Glenn Cassidy, in hopes that she could persuade him to take care of the problem. Edmonds began habitually seducing Cassidy and then refusing to follow through with the act, unless he agreed to kill her former partner and the father of her child, Michael Caposiena. She also introduced the gun she wanted him to use in their sessions as further motivation to get the job done. The plan worked, and one night in March 2016, Cassidy entered Caposiena's home in Melbourne while Edmonds waited nearby, suspecting that something was amiss. Caposiena approached the door armed with a kitchen knife. He stabbed the intruder twice, and Cassidy shot Caposiena in the head, leaving both men dead. Authorities accused Edmonds of masterminding the plot and of wanting Caposiena dead due to an ongoing child custody dispute. Her jail cellmate claimed there were additional motives, and that Edmonds wanted Cassidy to go to prison for the murder so she would gain sole access to his home and assets. But she'll get none of those things. In 2022, more than 6 years after the botched home invasion left 2 men dead, a jury convicted Edmonds of murder. She'll be sentenced at some point in 2023, but one thing is clear, she's going to prison for a long time for what she's done. 5. Lottery scam victim nearly loses everything. In 2012, a woman in her 90s received a life-changing phone call at her home in Raleigh, North Carolina. She'd won a large lottery prize, but in order to receive it, she had to pay $9,000 to cover taxes and other expenses, something that legitimate lotteries in the US never make winners do. Believing that she was about to cash in on the prize of a lifetime, the senior citizen sent the money. It was the first of many wire transfers she would make to the caller, who always had an excuse for needing another payment before they could release the prize money. Altogether, the woman paid $200,000 to the stranger. It might sound crazy that someone would fall for such an obvious con, but these lottery scams, which often originate from Jamaica, are immensely profitable, pouring an estimated $300 million into the country's economy every year. Much like romance scams, lottery scammers target older Americans who are more likely to be lonely and losing their mental faculties due to their age. These victims also tend to have more money and assets than a younger person. Lottery scammers befriend their victims with the goal of creating an emotional dependency that will keep the money flowing in. And it works. In fact, some victims have struggled to cut ties with swindlers even after they learned they were being duped. After all, scammers have plenty of time for their victims, more than anyone else in the person's life, and in many cases, they become a lifeline for fighting off the crippling loneliness that many senior citizens suffer from. Authorities managed to recover $45,000 of the Raleigh woman's money. However, many victims aren't that lucky. In fact, most never see a penny of their money back. But recently, federal authorities have stepped up their efforts to combat lottery scammers. They've also started negotiating with Jamaican authorities to bring suspects to the US to face justice, showing that these crimes won't be tolerated and that being in another country doesn't mean someone won't end up in an American courtroom. 4. Johanna Lee Lam. One day in 2019, police in Minnetonka, Minnesota were summoned to the office of psychotherapist Johanna Lee Lam, who claimed that a client had assaulted her during an appointment. The man Lam was accusing said that he and the therapist had been involved in a consensual physical relationship over a period of several months. Their intimate encounters mainly happened during his therapy sessions, and Lam continued to charge him $200 per visit, even after the affair started. Following the bizarre incident, authorities launched an investigation into the illicit couple's relationship. Searches of their phones, computers, appointment records, and payment histories revealed that the man was telling the truth. When police questioned Lam for a second time, she allegedly admitted that the relationship was consensual, that her client didn't assault her, and that things got hot and heavy in her office. In doing so, she violated ethical boundaries that no professional mental health expert should ever cross. It would have been wrong with any client, but the state's Department of Human Services identified the victim as a vulnerable adult, which made the situation even more disturbing. Lam pleaded guilty to a misconduct charge and received a 48-month suspended prison sentence, which spared her from time behind bars as long as she complied with the terms of her probation. She also lost her license to practice psychology for a minimum of 10 years. If she chooses to reapply at that point, she'll have to prove to the licensing authority that she's fit and competent to start practicing again. 3. Elderly exploitation. Online dating has given predators and crooks an endless platform for finding new victims at the touch of their fingertips and from behind a screen, affording them a level of anonymity and convenience that didn't exist before the internet. And while people of all ages fall for these so-called romance scams, swindlers disproportionately target lonely middle-aged and elderly women who seem financially stable. In early 2023, a woman named Donna Martin told News Nation Now about how her mother Mary was reeled into one of these scams. After her husband passed away in 2021, Mary began chatting online with a man, Oscar Avery, who claimed he worked at an oil rig. Avery never shared a photo of himself with Mary, but he didn't need to. He was able to captivate her by giving her the attention and flattery she craved, and by making her think he had feelings for her. Mary soon began sending copious amounts of money to her virtual lover, but she kept it a secret from her family. Donna caught on that something was off about her mother's new relationship, so she did some digging. After discovering Mary's house for sale online, she found conversations on the senior citizen's phone with someone saved as My Privacy, who instructed her not to tell anyone that she'd put her house on the market. Donna tried everything in her power to convince Mary that she was being swindled and that Oscar Avery showed all the signs of a textbook scammer. However, Mary adamantly believed that her online boyfriend would eventually materialize in person. In addition to her refusal to disentangle from the relationship, the situation was outside the scope of what the local police department was used to dealing with. Donna felt helpless as she watched her mom squander her assets for someone who had no intention of ever meeting her and didn't care one bit if their manipulation ended up ruining her life. 2. Andrew Tate. British-American influencer Andrew Tate rose to infamy as a loud and proud misogynist who promoted an ultra-masculine lifestyle and was kicked off several social media platforms for his crude and controversial commentary. Suspecting that his behavior had become criminal, police in Romania began investigating Tate and his brother, Tristan, in 2022 and concluded a series of raids on properties connected to the men. Detectives reportedly found evidence suggesting that the pair trafficked and did other horrible things to women as part of an organized crime ring. Andrew and Tristan were arrested and taken into custody, but have yet to face formal charges. As of February 2023, the investigation was ongoing. 2 suspected female accomplices, nicknamed Tate's Angels, were also arrested. They were released from jail for the time being, due to the possibility that they were victimized in some way or another. The women denied being trafficked and claimed that they worked for the Tates voluntarily, but a court-appointed psychiatrist concluded that they were brainwashed and were unaware that they were being exploited. In a rare ruling, the court determined that they were victims, even though they insisted that they weren't. According to the psychiatrist, the Tates recruited their victims by pretending to want a relationship or marriage and manipulating their targets to fall in love with them. And they were allegedly so good at it, the women are still in need of deprogramming from their false perception of the situation. Only time will tell what the future holds for the explosive case, which is still in its beginning stages. 1. Charles Morris Adams. Police in Iowa City received an unusual complaint in 2016 when a woman reported that she was involved in a physical relationship with her elderly therapist and that he was billing her for their sessions. She said that the affair with 76-year-old Charles Morris Adams had been going on for over a year, and that the pair were intimate in his office at least 25 times while she was his patient. Their most recent encounter had occurred several weeks earlier. Adams reportedly owned up to the inappropriate relationship when confronted by the police, and he also admitted that he knew it was wrong. He was convicted of exploitation by a counselor or therapist as a result, and while it's unclear whether he served any prison time, his photo, address, and the details of his behavior are listed on the state's offender database due to the nature of his crime. It's not known whether the now 83-year-old still practices psychotherapy, but his LinkedIn profile appears to be active and current, and states that he's a self-employed counselor. Would you rather find out that your partner faked an interest in you because they needed a place to live, or that a close friend had lied to you for months about being down on their luck, knowing you would lend them money and feel too bad to ask for it back? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.